The night the richest man in Boston learned who I really was, I was just trying not to spill water on his mother. Our restaurant, the Meridian, sat on top of a glass tower that made the city look like a toy model. People booked tables months in advance just to take selfies with the skyline behind them. I didn't belong there and I felt it every second of every shift. I wore the uniform, black dress, crisp apron, low heels that killed my feet, but I never quite disappeared into it. I was the quiet one, the polite one, the girl who never talks about her life. That was exactly how I wanted it. Quiet was safe. Small was safe. Forgettable was safest of all. Table 14, my manager whispered, leaning in like he was announcing a royal visit. Hale. Be perfect. I knew that name. Everyone in Boston did. Nathan Hale. Billionaire founder of Metasite Systems, the software company that sold efficiency solutions to hospitals. Half the city praised him for modernizing healthcare. The other half cursed his name in the dark. I didn't belong to either half anymore. I didn't belong anywhere. I glanced toward table 14. He was there, tall, broad shoulders in a navy suit that probably cost more than my yearly rent. Dark hair, trimmed beard. Profile carved like he'd been designed in a boardroom. Money has a posture and his screamed it. He wasn't alone. Sitting across from him was an older woman with snowy hair pulled into a soft bun, pearls at her throat, hands folded neatly on the white tablecloth. Something about the stillness of her posture, the way she scanned the room with almost fierce attention, hit me in the chest. I knew that look. I'd grown up with it. I took a breath, picked up my tray and walked toward them. Good evening, I said, forcing my voice steady. Welcome to the Meridian. My name is Maya. I'll be taking care of you tonight. His eyes slid over me, quick and assessing the way people look at a menu item they're not sure they want. Up close, they were a stormy gray sharp enough to make my stomach dip. Sparkling water for my mother, he said. Still for me. The older woman watched his mouth, not his eyes. Her gaze flicked to mine, then to his, then back to mine. She lifted her hand and tapped 2 fingers against her chest. I knew that sign. My heart stuttered. I set the tray down on the side stand and let my own hands rise before I could talk myself out of it. Good evening, I signed slowly and clearly. It's nice to have you with us. Her whole face changed. Lines of worry melted into pure light. Her eyes widened, and a smile bloomed so gently it almost broke me. Her hands moved, quick and graceful, decades of practice showing in every motion. You sign, she answered. Are you deaf? I shook my head, feeling my throat tighten. No, I signed back. My little brother was. He taught me. I hadn't signed those words to anyone outside a therapist's office in years. They felt like reopening a box I kept duct taped shut. The woman's hand stilled. Her eyes softened. I'm sorry, she signed. He passed. I swallowed. Yes. Across the table I felt him watching. I could feel eyes on my fingers like heat. I turned to him automatically, slipping back into spoken English. Your mother was asking about the water, I said. She prefers sparkling, yes? With lemon. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You sign, he said. Yes, I answered quietly. A little. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, annoyance, confusion, I couldn't tell. Most people just nod and smile. His mother signed quickly, tapping the table to get his attention first. They pretend to understand. She didn't pretend. I had to resist the instinct to translate for him. I'd spent my childhood filling in every silence for my brother, my teenage years doing the same for deaf patients at the hospital, before everything blew up. He watched her hands, then glanced at me. What is she saying? He asked. I flicked my gaze to his mother. May I interpret? I signed to her. Or would you rather I keep your comments to myself? She laughed, soundless but bright, and nodded. Tell him, she signed. It's fun when he's off balance. I almost smiled. She says she appreciates that I didn't pretend, I told him. And that it's fun when you're off balance. He shot his mother a look. She lifted her chin in smug confirmation. The dynamic between them was obvious. He controlled everything except her. What's your name? She signed. Maya, I answered. Her eyes crinkled. I'm Ruth, she signed. This is my son Nathan. Do you like working here? That one always felt like a trick question. I lied the way poor people learn to lie, with a smile. It's a good job, I signed. I'm grateful for it. Something in her expression told me she didn't believe me, but she let it go. Her hands moved again, nimble. Later, she signed conspiratorially. You can tell me your real story. My body went cold. There wasn't enough money in the world to make me tell that story to anyone at table 14. I'll bring your water, I said aloud, stepping back, my hands suddenly heavy. I turned to leave. Nathan's voice followed me. Wait. I paused. How many languages do you speak? He asked. 2 spoken, I said. English and Spanish. And American Sign Language. His eyes narrowed slightly. Where did you learn ASL? He asked. My brother, I answered, carefully neutral. Later, I studied more in college. And what did you study? He asked it casually, like it was small talk. My pulse hammered so hard it made my apron vibrate. Health administration, I said. Excuse me. I'll be right back with your drinks. I walked away before he could ask more. My fingers digging into the tray so hard my knuckles hurt. Health administration. Hospital policy. Numbers that looked clean until they were paid for with blood. The past pressed at the base of my skull like a migraine. I forced myself to breathe, to move, to smile when another table snapped their fingers. The restaurant buzzed around me. All soft laughter and polished forks and the low murmur of deals being made over dry-aged beef. For most people here, hospitals were places they visited, not places that defined them. For me, hospitals were where my life had ended. And the man at table 14 had helped design the software that killed it. I didn't know if he knew my name. I didn't know if he remembered the investigation, the press conferences, the months of being America's favorite villain. I'd done everything in my power to make sure he wouldn't recognize me if he saw me. Different hair, different city, different last name on my work papers. I had become a professional nobody. But when I returned with the water and Ruth's eyes lit up like we were old friends, I felt the first crack in my invisibility. Thank you, she signed. Will you be our server all night? Yes, I signed back. If that's all right. Good, she answered. I like you. Her son's gaze was still on me. There was something like suspicion there now, and something else that made my chest tight. Recognition. Not of me. Of the shape of my answers. Of the tension in my shoulders when I said, Health administration. He didn't say anything. Not yet. Ruth signed one more sentence before I turned away. You have sad eyes, she told me gently. But your hands are brave. I smiled, the practiced smile of someone who forgot how to do it for real. Enjoy your evening, I said. I'll be right back with your appetizers. And for the first time since I started at the Meridian, I wished I could be anywhere else. I didn't sleep that night. After we closed and I dragged my aching feet home to my tiny studio apartment over a laundromat, I went through the motions. Shower, leftovers, scrolling my phone to pretend I wasn't thinking. But my brain refused to cooperate. Every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Ruth's hands, Nathan's eyes, and a conference room full of men who hadn't listened when it still mattered. I used to work at Harborview Medical Center. Not as a nurse, not as a doctor. Those people wore visible armor, scrubs, badges, stethoscopes, and their work was clear. Mine had been hidden but just as sharp. I was one of the youngest patient care coordinators they'd ever hired. 26, fresh out of my master's program in health administration, obsessed with doing good from the inside. That's what I used to say. Change the system by understanding it. Make sure someone at the table remembered that patients were people, not numbers. Then Harborview signed a contract with Metasite Systems. Cutting-edge efficiency, the brochure said. Smarter allocation of resources. Reduced waste, improved outcomes. Nathan Hale's face had been on half the slides at the rollout. Not live, of course. People like him didn't come to the actual hospitals whose budgets they trimmed. He appeared on screen in a crisp video. Promising ethics, compassion. Tech with a soul. 6 months later, a boy named Tyler died in a hallway because the Metasite algorithm had flagged his case as non-urgent. And the attending ER doctor never saw his chart in time. They needed someone to blame. Not the tool. Not the people who paid for it. Someone human-shaped and disposable. I had tried to fight. I had tried to shout. I had tried to drag the truth into every fluorescent-lit meeting, until my supervisor's voice turned sharp and HR's eyes turned cold. You signed off on the protocol, they said. I wrote the memo, yes, I'd answered. But I flagged the risks. I wrote it in bold. I sent 3 follow-up emails. Those emails vanished. My memo couldn't be located. Every report I'd written that questioned the algorithm's bluntness disappeared from the shared drive. What we have, the hospital's lawyer said, eyeing me like a stain, is your signature on the rollout and no record of any objections. Media loved the story. Young administrator approves cost-cutting policy, child dies. It had a clean narrative. People don't have patience for complex systems and shared responsibility. They want a face to hate. My face worked. Maybe it was my age, maybe it was the grief-stricken mother crying on TV, maybe it was that I refused to cry in public and that made me look cold. Whatever it was, the story stuck. Harborview terminated my contract for cause. State regulators investigated briefly, then closed the file. We've implemented new safeguards, the hospital said in a press release. This was a tragic, isolated failure of judgment by one employee, not a systemic issue. You can't fight that kind of machine and win. My brother died 3 months later. Not from the hospital scandal. From a seizure in his sleep. But I've never believed those things were unconnected. Stress isn't just a word, it's a weight. It crushes the people standing closest to you. After his funeral, I stopped trying to fix anything. I learned how to disappear. Boston was supposed to be my blank slate. The Meridian was supposed to be just a job. Smile, carry plates, count tips, keep my head down. Then Nathan Hale walked into my station with his deaf mother, and everything I'd been running from, pulled up a chair and ordered the tasting menu. He came back 3 nights later. Same table. Same suit, different tie. Same mother, different scarf. Same me, different heartbeat. When I walked up with the menus, Ruth's whole face lit up. You're here, she signed. Good. Hi, Ruth. I signed back. It's nice to see you again. Her hands moved, quick and eager. I told him we had to come back. The food is good, but the company is better. I glanced at Nathan. His expression was unreadable. If anything, he looked more guarded than last time. Good evening, I said aloud. Welcome back to the Meridian. He didn't waste time on small talk. Health administration, he said. Which hospital? Blood roared in my ears. I could have lied. I should have lied. Boston had 3 major hospital systems, countless clinics. I could pick one at random and he'd never know. But then his mother reached for my wrist, gentle but insistent, and her eyes, God, those eyes, searched my face like she already knew I was a runner. Which hospital? He asked again quietly. Harborview Medical Center, I said. The air between us thickened. The one in Portland? He asked. I nodded. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I see, he said. Ruth's gaze moved between us. What is he asking? She signed. I swallowed. He asked where I used to work, I answered. I told him. Her fingers flexed, hesitated. In a hospital? She asked. That makes sense. Your hands know how to talk to frightened people. If she noticed the way mine shook, she was kind enough not to say. Nathan leaned back in his chair, studying me like I was an unexpected variable in a data set. How long did you work there? He asked. 3 years, I said. I left 2 years ago. He knew this. I could tell he knew. The math wasn't complicated. The timing lined up too perfectly with headlines someone like him couldn't have missed. What did you do there? He asked. Patient care coordination. Policy implementation. Did you work with our software? He asked. I lifted one shoulder. Everyone did, I said. Eventually. Something flashed behind his eyes. Guilt? Anger? I couldn't tell if it was directed at me or himself. Is this about your company? His mother signed, catching just enough of his tone to recognize the edge. Don't ruin my dinner, Nathan. He huffed out a breath that might have been a laugh. It's not ruined, he said softly, more to her than to me. Then to me. We'll start with sparkling water again. And the tasting menu. Chef's choice. Yes, sir, I said. As I turned away, his voice followed. And Maya. I paused. Yes. Don't disappear on me. The words hit harder than they should have. I nodded anyway, even though I fully intended to do exactly that just as soon as I figured out how. He left me a card at the end of the night. Ruth slipped it into my hand when I brought the check. He's annoying, she signed fondly. But persistent. Like his grandfather. The card was thick, simple, stupidly expensive. Just his name, a number, and an email address. He thinks fast, she signed. But he doesn't always think deep. Maybe you can help him. I'm just a waitress. I signed back before I could stop myself. Her expression sharpened. Don't lie in my language, she answered. I watched your hands all night. You listen with your whole body. That's not just a waitress. That's someone who used to be important and is trying very hard to forget. She wasn't wrong. That made it worse. I appreciate the tip, I said aloud, tucking the card into my apron pocket like it burned. Have a good night. When they left, I told myself I'd throw the card away when I got home. I didn't. I put it on my kitchen counter and glared at it every time I passed. It took him exactly 4 days to make the first move. I checked my email after a double shift and found a message with no greeting. No signature line, just, I'd like to talk. Somewhere other than the restaurant. Coffee. Saturday, 10 a.m. Beacon Hill Cafe. I stared at it for a long time. Every part of me screamed no. No coffee. No conversations. No peeling off the thin scab I'd built over Harborview by letting the man whose software had started it all poke at it with a spoon. I typed 3 different drafts of, I'm not interested. Deleted them all. Then closed my laptop and paced my 12 feet of living room until the neighbor started banging on the wall. I didn't know him anything. He didn't know me either. He hadn't personally signed my termination papers. He hadn't looked me in the eye and told me, someone has to fall on their sword for this. He hadn't watched me pack my desk into a cardboard box while security hovered. But I'd watched his face in small rectangles for months, training videos, investor updates, promotional clips, while we implemented Metasite. He was the voice that told us, our product never replaces human judgment. It simply makes your job easier. Maybe I wanted to know if he believed that. Maybe I wanted to see if he could look me in the eye and still say it. Saturday at 9:53 a.m., I walked into Beacon Hill Cafe telling myself I was just going to hear him out and then never see him again. He was already there. Of course he was. Rich people are never late when they're the ones who set the meeting. He sat by the window, dressed down in a charcoal sweater and dark jeans that probably still cost more than my rent. The sunlight caught the edges of his hair, making him look almost human. He had 2 coffees on the table. He guessed correctly. One black, one with oat milk. I almost left. Then he looked up and those storm gray eyes locked on mine and retreat wasn't an option anymore. Maya, he said, standing like we knew each other. Mr. Hale, I answered, staying very much not hugging distance away. Please, he said. Nathan. I sat. The coffee was the good kind, the kind my budget didn't allow. I wrapped my hands around the cup, mostly to have an excuse not to look at him. He didn't bother with small talk. I read the Harborview report, he said. My chest clenched. Of course you did, I said quietly. And the internal memos. The emails. My head snapped up. You what? We provide the software, he said. In certain investigations, we're granted limited access to internal communications to review how our product was used. I didn't look at those at the time. I do now. Heat rose in my face. You went through my emails? Not yours specifically, he said. Everyone's. But yours were hard to miss. There are moments you don't want strangers to see, even in text. The message you send at 2 a.m. begging your supervisor to reconsider a policy. The draft you never send, full of words like unsafe and negligent and blood on our hands. The one-line email you actually send instead. Per our discussion, attached is the revised rollout memo. You wrote everything down, he said softly. You documented every concern, every warning, every gut feeling that this was wrong. Doesn't seem to have mattered much, I said. His jaw flexed. It didn't matter then, he said. But it matters now. To me. I laughed, sharp and humorless. Why? I asked. Lingering corporate guilt? PR cleanup? Or do you just like collecting tragic stories from the people your software steamrolls? He flinched. I deserve that, he said quietly. Probably worse. Ruth's words flashed through my mind. Don't lie in my language. He wasn't lying now. That made me angrier. Do you know what it's like? I asked, voice shaking. To watch a child die and know that somewhere, some line of code flagged him as low priority because his vitals looked stable enough on a screen? His eyes shuddered. No, he said. I don't. Do you know what it's like to stand in front of his mother afterward? I continued. To listen to lawyers and administrators argue about liability, while she's downstairs choosing a tiny coffin? His hands tightened around his cup. I've sat in conference rooms, he said slowly, where people talk about acceptable margins of error. I've never held the hand of someone that error destroyed. Well, I said. Congratulations. Now you've had coffee with one. He could have pushed back. He could have reminded me that humans, not algorithms, make ultimate decisions. He could have thrown statistics at me about lives saved by early interventions flagged by Metasite. He didn't. Instead, he did something worse. He looked wrecked. Maya, he said. You weren't the failure at Harborview. You were the warning. They chose to ignore you. I blinked. Is that your big comfort speech? I asked. Because I have to tell you, it needs work. It's not a speech, he said. It's what the data says. Every time an institution overrides a warning or ignores frontline feedback, it creates fault lines. Our internal review shows them over and over. I just never thought to ask what happened to the people who tried to speak up. Guilt is a strange thing to watch on a face you've only ever seen in polished videos. You built a product that hospital executives love because it gives them cover, I said. They can point at the screen and say, the tool said this was safe, and then blame anyone but themselves when it isn't. His eyes met mine steady. You're not wrong, he said. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Why am I here? I asked finally. You didn't bring me for a software ethics seminar. You could hire a consultant for that and pay them more than I see in a year. So what do you want from me, Mr. Hale? He took a breath. I want to fix what happened to you, he said. I laughed again because the alternative was crying. You can't, I said. And even if you could, why would you? Harborview was an out-of-state client. My case is closed. It would cost you more than it's worth. That's not how people like you operate. How do people like me operate? He asked. Profit, I said. Growth. Shareholder value. Efficiency. All those words that sound harmless until you realize they're code for someone like me will get flattened if you stand in the way. His gaze didn't waver. You're right about a lot of my life, he said baldly. I've made decisions I'm not proud of in the name of efficiency. I've treated metrics like they matter more than stories. But I'm trying to change that. And I think you can help me. There it was. The ask. I sat back. So this is a job interview? I asked. Are you offering me a position in your empire of calculated remorse? For the first time since I sat down, he smiled. It was small, crooked, and surprisingly warm. I'm offering you a chance, he said, to help me build something that doesn't wreck people like you. You don't even know me, I said. I know enough, he answered. I know you didn't run to the press. You didn't sue. You didn't sell your story to anyone who would pay. You disappeared and took the blame a whole system should have shared. That tells me 3 things. You're loyal, you're principled, and you've been hurt enough to know where the weak spots are. His gaze softened. And I know my mother doesn't like many people, he added. And she liked you in 5 minutes. That pulled a reluctant snort out of me. So because your mother approves, I'm magically trustworthy? I asked. She's got a better track record than most of my background checks, he said. I looked at him. At the man whose software had been the crowbar used to pry my life apart. At the son of the woman who'd looked at my hands like they were speaking her language better than anyone had in years. All right, I said. Let's say I believe you want to fix things. What does that actually mean, Nathan? You can't go back in time and unsign my termination papers. No, he said. But I can do 3 things. He held up a finger. First, I can pay for a full independent review of Harborview's implementation of our software, with your written objections front and center. If the review confirms what I already know from your emails, that your warnings were ignored, I'll publish it. Publicly. No PR spin. Names included. A second finger. Second, I can fund a legal team to help you file for a formal reinvestigation of your case with the state medical board. You may not want your job back, but you deserve to have your record cleared. The third finger. And third, I can offer you a role at Metasite, not in sales, not in optimization, but in a new division I've been too cowardly to staff properly, human impact oversight. People whose entire job is to say, this protocol looks good on paper, but in a real ward at 3 a.m., this will get people hurt. People like you. The words hung in the air like a life raft I didn't trust. And what do you get? I asked. A lot more work, he said dryly. Angry board members. Lower short-term profits. Ugly headlines about, Hale admits flaws in flagship product. And why is that worth it to you? He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Because my mother taught me to listen when people speak a language you don't understand, he said. And for a long time, I pretended I didn't understand the language of harm my product was speaking. You're translating it for me. I stared at him. Do you rehearse speeches like that? I asked. That one? No, he said. That was a live performance. Despite myself, I smiled. Just a little. This isn't a movie, I said. You don't get redemption arcs in real life. This isn't about my redemption, he said. It's about yours. The word felt wrong in my mouth. Redemption implies I did something wrong, I said. I made mistakes, sure. I trusted the wrong people. I thought I could change things from inside a system that wasn't interested in changing. But I didn't kill that boy. No, he said. You didn't. So why should I spend the rest of my life fixing a problem I didn't create? Because you're the only one I've found who understands both sides, he said simply. The human cost and the system math. And because until someone like you helps design these tools, more boys like Tyler are going to die while men like me count efficiency scores. He spread his hands. I can't force you, he said. If you walk out of here and never speak to me again, I'll still fund that independent review. I'll still have my lawyers push to get your record cleared. That's the bare minimum I owe you. The job. That's something I'm hoping you'll take, because you're tired of watching people like me screw this up without you. Silence pressed against my eardrums. For the first time since Harborview, someone wasn't asking me to be quiet. They were asking me to speak louder. You're really going to go after Harborview? I asked. Publicly. Yes, he said. If I don't, then all of this is just guilt-flavored PR. And I'm already good at that. I looked down at my coffee. At my hands, the ones Ruth had called brave. At the faint scar on my left ring finger where I'd once worn a cheap silver band my ex gave me, promising we'd change healthcare together. He'd left the hospital a month after I was fired, quietly hired by a different system, his record untouched. He'd never called, never written. When my brother died, his name was the one I wanted to scream at the sky, but mine was the only one anyone shouted on TV. You know this will paint a target on my back, I said. Again. Harborview will come for me. Their lawyers will call me a bitter ex-employee. Internet trolls will rip me apart like they did last time. Yes, he said. But this time you won't be standing there alone while they do. He said it so simply it scared me more than any threat. Trust is not a single leap. It's a series of tiny steps over ground that's already collapsed under you once. I took one. If we do this, I said slowly, we do it my way. No spin. No press leaks until the review is complete. And you don't get to soften the language to make your board feel better. Done, he said. And I keep my current job until my name is cleared. I added. I can't gamble rent on your conscience. Also done, he said. We'll structure the role around your schedule at the Meridian for now. I blinked. You agreed pretty fast, I said. He shrugged. I've had practice making big decisions with incomplete information, he said. This one's easier than most. My gut says you're right. And my mother likes you. I'm trusting both. I exhaled. The smallest of nods. Okay, I said. Then I guess. I'm in. The next months were the strangest of my life. By day, I carried plates and refilled wine glasses and pretended my life had never extended beyond table numbers and tip percentages. By night, and on the rare mornings I wasn't on breakfast shift, I took the elevator up to a floor in Hale Tower marked only by a small sign. Impact Review. It wasn't a real department yet. It was a conference room with bad coffee and a whiteboard covered in angry arrows. The first time I walked in, there were 3 people there. A quiet data scientist named Priya, a former nurse named Jordan, and an older man in a worn blazer who introduced himself as Sam, used to be head of quality assurance, now professional troublemaker. "We're Nathan's conscience," Sam told me wryly. "Or his attempt at one." "And you're the girl from Harborview," Jordan added, eyes searching my face. "We heard about that case." "Yeah," I said. "Most people did." Priya pushed a stack of printouts toward me. "Here," she said. "You were right about the algorithm. It's too blunt. The weighting on certain factors is off. We flagged it internally, but management said changing it would reduce throughput." "Throughput," Jordan muttered. "That's what they call people now." I took the papers. Charts. Tables. Probability models. I used to live in those numbers. Metasite likes to say, "We only reflect the choices humans make," Priya said. Which is technically true. The problem is, once you wrap those choices in code and a pretty interface, people forget they're still making them. "So we rewrite the code," I said. Priya smiled, small and fierce. "That's the plan," she said. "With your help." We worked. We reviewed case studies where Metasite had saved lives, early sepsis detections, rare diagnoses flagged by pattern recognition. We reviewed cases where it had failed. Harborview wasn't unique. Different names, same story. Delayed care. Deferred scans. Non-urgent flags that might as well have read, "Not profitable enough." "We can't fix all of this overnight," Sam said one evening as we stared at a wall of red-inked printouts. "But we can start forcing these systems to treat people as more than columns." In parallel, Nathan's lawyers quietly started the Harborview review. He kept me updated but never pressured. "Regulators agreed to reopen case documentation," he said one afternoon, dropping into the chair next to mine in the conference room. "We hired an ex-inspector to lead the review. You'll get to see his draft before anyone else does." I nodded, my throat tight. "And your record?" he asked. "Got a letter," I said. "State Board will consider revising prior disciplinary notation pending outcome of independent review." Which is legal speak for "don't get your hopes up." He frowned. "Let me worry about your hopes," he said. "You worry about whether Priya's new triage weighting makes sense in an actual ward." I snorted. "Bossy," I said. "Efficient," he corrected. Sometimes we argued. About numbers. About where to set alert thresholds. About the difference between acceptable risk, in a spreadsheet, and an acceptable risk when you have to tell a mother her son isn't coming home. He listened more than he talked. That surprised me. So did the nights when we worked until midnight, then went down to the building's tiny kitchen so he could burn grilled cheese while I laughed and pretended his cooking didn't taste like regret. "You're terrible at this," I told him one night, crumbs on my fingers. "I was raised on catered dinners and takeout," he said. "You can't expect miracles." "Your mother never cooked?" I asked. "She did," he said. "Before she lost her balance and the doctors told her it wasn't safe to be near hot stoves alone. After that, she taught me how to cook with reservations." His smile was wistful. "You two are close," I said. "She's the only person who knew me before all this." He gestured around, the glass, the steel, the entire empire. "Before my name was a press release instead of just a name. Which do you like better?" I asked. He hesitated. "Depends on the day," he admitted. Most days it seemed he liked whatever version of himself he was when we were arguing over code and ethics and the shape of a better system. Other days I saw the old version bleed through, sharp, impatient, more comfortable with numbers than with people. But slowly the balance shifted. His board hated it. Impact Review is a cost center. One of them snarled in a private meeting I sat in on as an observer. "So are lawsuits," Nathan said mildly. "And front-page exposés. Transparency opens us up to liability," another warned. "Secrecy is what got us here," he countered. I watched him stand up to men twice his age, men who had sat on more corporate boards than I'd had birthdays. And every time he cited Harborview as the reason Metasite had to change, my stomach flipped. It was strange hearing my worst day used as a case for hope. The Harborview review landed on my desk 6 months after that first coffee. It was thick, dense, every page heavy with words I'd thought I'd never see in print. Early internal warnings were documented and disregarded. The report read, "Administrative concerns prioritized efficiency metrics over clinical judgment. Responsibility lies with multiple levels of leadership. We find no evidence that Ms. Maya Rivera, my old name, not the one on my Meridian pay stubs, acted with negligence or malicious intent. On the contrary, her documented objections suggest an awareness of risk that, if heeded, might have prevented the adverse outcome." Might have prevented. 2 words that made my lungs feel too small. "It's not the same as would have," I said, voice shaking, as Nathan watched me read. "No," he said, "because they can't say that with certainty. But they can say what matters, that you were not the problem." My eyes burned. He hesitated. "Do you want this to go public?" he asked. "You have a say. If we publish, your name re-enters the story. For good and bad." I thought about the months after Tyler's death. The messages. The threats. The strangers who looked at me in the grocery store like I'd killed their children too. "I want it on record," I said. "Somewhere. Even if nobody reads it, I want it to exist. Not just the live version." He nodded. "Then we publish," he said. "Harborview will fight it. So will my PR team. But this time they're not the ones who get to define the narrative." "Your board will hate you," I said. "They already do," he said. "And my mother will knit me a sweater that says, 'At least I tried,' in ASL signs." I laughed, half choked by tears. "You're taking a big hit for someone you barely know," I said. His gaze caught mine. "I don't barely know you," he said. "I know your worst day. And you still walked into my office and decided to make our product better instead of suing us into oblivion. That's more than I know about most people I work with." "Maybe I should have sued," I muttered. "Probably," he said. "And you still can. I'll recommend you a good lawyer." He wasn't joking. That scared me more than anything, because it meant he wasn't doing this to win me over. He was doing it because somewhere along the way his conscience had actually grown a backbone. The day the report went public, the internet did what it always does. Some people apologized. Some people doubled down. "Corporate whitewash," a few tweets read. "Rich guy protects his own software by blaming hospital." Others posted screenshots of the original headlines about me side by side with excerpts from the new report. "Turns out the villain was trying to save lives," one journalist wrote. "We should all be asking why it took 6 years and a billionaire's guilty conscience to admit it." "It wasn't guilt," I muttered, scrolling. "Okay, maybe a little guilt." The state board sent another letter. Formal this time. Upon review of new evidence, the board has voted unanimously to rescind its prior disciplinary findings against Ms. Rivera. "We regret any undue harm to her professional reputation." I read that sentence so many times the words blurred. Regret any undue harm. As if harm were a side effect, not the whole point. Nathan found me on the terrace outside the Impact Review conference room. Letter in hand, wind whipping my hair around my face. "Well?" he asked. "They cleared me," I said. "Good," he said. Didn't feel good. It felt like standing in a burned-out house holding a certificate that says, "We admit it wasn't your fault the fire started." I looked at him. "Now what?" I asked. "Now," he said, "you get to decide who you are when you're not busy being someone's scapegoat." The Meridian didn't feel like home anymore. It had never been more than a safe hiding place, but once the truth came out, hiding didn't fit right on my skin. Ruth noticed the shift before anyone else. "You walk like you're half in, half out," she signed one night when they came in for dinner. "Like your feet can't decide where they belong." "I'm figuring it out," I signed back. "Are you working with him now?" she asked, nodding toward her son. "Yes," I signed. "Good," she answered. "He needs people who tell him no without being afraid. I can't be everywhere." "That's a big job," I signed. She smiled, mischief in her eyes. "Your hands are big enough," she answered. Nathan watched us, curiosity in his gaze. "What is she saying?" he asked. "That you're very difficult," I said. Ruth laughed so hard she had to dab at her eyes with her napkin. "What did you really say?" he pressed. I shrugged. "Trade secret," I said. His eyes softened. "Come work for me full-time," he said later, when his mother was in the restroom and the dishes were cleared. "I already do," I said. Part-time. You know what I mean, he said. Make this official. Impact Review is growing. We need a director. Someone who knows how both sides think. Someone who isn't afraid to make enemies when it matters. Director, I repeated. That's a big title for someone who spent the last 2 years memorizing specials and asking if people want still or sparkling. Maybe you were never meant to be just that, he said. Just that. I thought about Tyler. About my brother. About Ruth watching me sign across linen-draped tables. About the stack of cases on our whiteboard where Metasite had started to do better, because we dared to question what efficient actually meant. Titles don't fix people, I said. No, he agreed. But the right people can fix what titles broke. He wasn't wrong. I gave the Meridian my notice a week later. My manager tried to talk me out of it. You're reliable, he said. You never start drama. You're exactly what I need on weekends. I'm not what I need anymore, I said. He blinked, then nodded. Good for you, he said. Don't forget about us when you're rich and important. Trust me, I said. I have a complicated relationship with both those words. Directing Impact Review wasn't glamorous. It was messy. Long hours. Heated arguments. Hospitals that slammed their doors in our faces when we asked to see what they'd put under the ignore this warning rug. But slowly things changed. We reweighted the triage algorithms to factor in not just numbers, but patterns doctors recognized as something's wrong, even when the vitals looked okay. We built in fail-safes that forced human review when cost-cutting decisions crossed certain thresholds. We added patient advocate flags. You press this button if something feels wrong, even if the computer says it's fine. Nobody gets penalized for listening to it. When the first story broke about a hospital where a nurse hit that flag and a little girl got a scan she would have otherwise missed, catching a tumor early enough to save her, Priya printed the article and taped it to our whiteboard. This one's yours, she wrote underneath. For Harborview. I cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes. Not just for the girl. For the version of me who had believed that nothing she did mattered. People started inviting me to speak. Conferences. Panels. Podcasts titled things like, When Algorithms Go Wrong. I said no to most of them at first. Then Ruth caught me ducking out of a Zoom call I'd agreed to do for a deaf patient advocacy group, because I'd suddenly felt too small. You think you're protecting yourself by staying quiet, she signed. But you're just protecting the people who hurt you. Talking about it doesn't bring him back, I signed. She tilted her head. Which him? She asked. The boy or your brother? I didn't answer. She took my hand. You can't fix what happened, she signed. But you can make sure fewer people carry that kind of silence. That's worth something. I took more invitations after that. Every time I told my story, my hand shook less. Every time I said, I was wronged, out loud, the guilt I'd wore like a coat got a little lighter. Nathan never pushed. He just appeared at the back of rooms sometimes, eyes steady, always leaving before the crowd swarmed. We didn't talk about what was happening between us. Not at first. We were colleagues, co-conspirators, two people trying to drag a system an inch closer to humane. But there were moments. Late nights in the office when our shoulders brushed and neither of us moved away. Shared cabs home when the city was too quiet and his hand found mine in the dark for a second too long. Ruth watching us with a look I recognized from 100 aunties at family weddings. Have you told her? She signed to him once when she thought I wasn't looking. Told me what? I asked aloud. Nathan's ears went pink. That she should ask for a raise, he said quickly. Ruth rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might stick. The first time he kissed me it wasn't planned. We were in the conference room of all places, papers spread everywhere, arguing about whether an alert threshold should sit at 3% or 4% risk. That's someone's kid, I said. 3% is enough to wake someone up. That's 200 false alarms a month in a mid-size hospital, he countered. Nurses burn out. They start ignoring all of them. We stared at each other across the table, both stubborn, both right in different ways. Sometimes I hate this, I said. Trying to turn care into math. Math is how we make sure care isn't just for the loudest or richest, he said. But it's only as good as the people willing to question the model. I'm tired of questioning, I said. I've been questioning for 6 years. I know, he said. His voice softened. But I also know you haven't stopped, he added. Even when it nearly destroyed you. I opened my mouth to fire back something sarcastic. Instead, what came out was a shaky exhale. He came around the table slowly, giving me time to step back. I didn't. He lifted his hand, not to touch my face, but to sign one word, awkward but sincere. Brave. I laughed, choked and startled. That's not how you sign it, I said, and corrected his hand shape, my fingers closing around his. The air shifted. He leaned in. His mouth brushed mine, gentle, hesitant, like he was asking a question he wasn't sure he had the right to ask. I answered yes. Not in words. In the way my hands gripped his shirt. In the way my eyes closed like they trusted him not to vanish when I opened them again. Later, when we pulled apart, breathing uneven, he rested his forehead against mine. This is a terrible idea, I said. The worst, he agreed. We work together, I said. So do a lot of people who have terrible ideas together, he said. Your mother is going to be insufferable, I added. He smiled, that real smile that made him look less like a magazine cover and more like the kid he must have been before stock markets and boardrooms. She already is, he said. Now it'll just have a reason. We didn't become a fairy tale overnight. He was still a billionaire. I was still a woman learning to put her life back together with duct tape and scar tissue. We fought. About work. About what stories he agreed to tell publicly, and which ones he thought were too inflammatory. About the days when I wanted to burn Metasite to the ground and start over. But we always came back to the same center. To Ruth's dining table, where she made us both practice new signs for words like accountability and stubborn. To the whiteboard in the impact review room, where Jordan drew hearts next to cases where an alert we designed had made a difference. To late nights on his balcony, drinking tea instead of wine because we both needed clear heads more than we needed numbness. A year after that first coffee, he asked me to marry him. Not at a fancy restaurant. Not on a beach. In a hospital. We were visiting a facility that had implemented our newest updates. A nurse pulled us aside in the hallway. I just wanted to say thank you, she told me. We had a case last month, boy came in, vitals looked okay, but his mom was worried. That new advocate flag triggered an extra review. Turned out he had a slow bleed. We caught it. You saved him. I shook my head. You saved him, I said. We just gave you a button to press. She smiled. Maybe, she said. But someone had to believe we needed that button. We walked out into the courtyard after that. The winter sun cold and bright, my chest tight. This is your doing, I told Nathan. He shook his head. This is ours, he said. Then he dropped to one knee on the stupid hospital bench, in his stupid expensive coat, with a ring he must have spent way too much time picking out. He didn't speak. He signed. His fingers moved slowly and perfectly, each shape careful. Marry. Me. 2 words. My brother would have laughed himself breathless watching a billionaire fumble ASL grammar. Ruth would have cried happy tears and corrected his hand shape. I cried both kinds. Yes, I signed back. Always. He slid the ring onto my finger and kissed my hands, like he understood how much they had carried. We had a small wedding. No press. No board members. Just family blood and found. Ruth walked me down the aisle, her hand trembling in mine, her eyes bright. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, she signed one word so emphatically half the guests laughed. No. We wrote our vows in 2 languages. Spoken. Signed. I promise, he said out loud, to remember that every number we see is a person I haven't met yet. I promise, I said, to keep asking hard questions, even when you hate the answers. He grinned. I probably will, he said. I know, I answered. We kissed, and somewhere in the back row Jordan hooped, and Priya dabbed at her eyes, and Sam muttered, about time, into his program. Afterward I found a quiet corner and looked at my hands. The same hands that had once shaken holding a memo nobody read. The same hands that had signed to a deaf boy in a pediatric ward that the MRI machine was just a big camera, not a monster. The same hands Ruth had called brave, even when I'd felt anything but. They weren't clean. They'd written policies that hurt people as well as ones that helped. They weren't magic. They couldn't bring Tyler back. They couldn't give my brother another sunrise. But they could do something. They could refuse to be quiet when quiet meant complicity. They could help shape tools that listened instead of silencing. They could sign "I'm sorry" and "I believe you" and "you matter" in a language plenty of people still refuse to learn. And they could hold on to someone willing to stand next to me when the world turned ugly. Sometimes, late at night, when the city outside our window hums with sirens and distant traffic, I think about the girl I used to be. The one who thought she could fix a broken system by behaving, by playing nice, by sitting at the table quietly and hoping someone would ask what she thought. If I could talk to her now, I'd tell her this. They were always going to blame you. They were never going to listen until you made it impossible not to. And the people who mattered, the ones worth trusting, worth loving, worth building anything with, were never the ones who needed you to be small. The shy waitress who greeted a billionaire's deaf mother and accidentally blew up her own invisibility? She doesn't exist anymore. Now, when I walk into a room, I don't try to disappear. I try to make space. For people like me. For people like Ruth. For the nurses and doctors and administrators who know that care can't be reduced to a spreadsheet and still be called care. For the kid whose chart my updated algorithm might bump up one notch higher, just enough to buy him another 50 years. Redemption isn't about proving you were innocent. It's about deciding what you're going to do with the truth once it's finally on your side. And revenge? Revenge is watching a system that nearly destroyed you start to change, not because it magically grew a conscience, but because you refused to stop speaking all the languages you knew, even when your voice shook. Even when your hands did, too.